if you can accept that on your screen, that'd be great. And we've already done the attendance part. Let's get into part 2. Serve Safe Manager. We're getting to a lot of temperatures today. So again, if there's any questions, thoughts along the way, please stop us and we'll make sure that we handle all of those. Need to get my, there we go. Okay. So the flow and the preparation of food, right? So we know produce, when we're prepping produce can be treated to control pathogens. We can clean or treat this produce either with chemicals or water containing ozone. Adam, you probably know this question. Beth, do you guys use any ozone at your facilities?
We don't know. We use a fruit and vegetable wash. That's a ServSafe or a ServSafe. That's an Ecolab product that we use. That's, I think it's got a little vinegar and whatever. I don't know what, but yeah, that's what we use in our stations for ready to eat produce.
Got it. Thank you. So as I've been teaching this class since the beginning of 2024, nobody's used ozone, so I don't know if we need to update that, but yeah, everybody's using some sort of washer, that type of thing. So thank you. So we certainly want to check with your local regulatory authority and obviously your own operations to make sure you're using the appropriate stuff. Some of this stuff today is shouldn't have to be said, but it is because obviously somebody's done it in the past. But when soaking or storing produce in standing water or an ice layer, do not mix those two together, right? So certainly different items together with that. Multiple batches of the same item. Again, if there's something that's on the first batch that could be transferred or mixed to the second, that type of thing. Some do's and don'ts. So never use ice as an ingredient if it was used to keep food cold. Again, shouldn't have to be mentioned, but again, it is because we've probably had some issues there somewhere in the past. Hold or carry ice in containers that held raw meat, seafood, or poultry, or chemicals, right? Just get rid of it. Get rid of it, dispose of it, that type of thing. We never want to touch any ice with our hands or use a glass to scoop the ice because of potential breakage, and then trying to find that in your ice. You have to pretty much purge the entire operation and start from scratch. Always store ice scoops outside like you see in the photo there, in a clean, protected location. Cooking requirements for specific food. Okay, so minimum internal cooking temperatures. So at 165 for at least 1 second, instantaneous for over 1 second, right? The meats are poultry or whole ground chicken, turkey, or duck. These, by the way, these will be on the exam. Stuffing made with fish, meat, or poultry. So again, right, just the poultry, and then any stuffing made with fish, meat, and poultry. Any stuffed meat, seafood, poultry, or pasta. And then dishes that include previously cooked, temperature and time and temperature controlled for safety ingredients. Any raw ingredients should be cooked to the required minimum internal temperatures. So that's the 165 for at least a second going forward. Questions, comments here? Internal temperature for the next level for 155 Fahrenheit for 17 seconds, meats that are not intact, including the following, and which is ground meat, which is beef, pork, and other types of meat products. Meat mechanically tenderized with needles or blades by injecting it with brine or flavors. So again, not the intact meat, but the stuff that's ground up, brined ham, or flavor injected roast. Those types of things fall under this category. Any meat vacuum tumbled with marinades or other solutions falls under this category. And then any meat that has been cubed or pounded, and ground meat from game animals commercially raised and inspected. Last one on here is the ground seafood, including chopped or minced seafood. So at 155 degrees Fahrenheit for 17 seconds. Again, on the exam, to know, they're going to ask you, where does this fall? So understand, know the temperature. Thoughts, questions, comments here. Continuing the list from 155 is any ratites, including the ostrich and emu type birds. Shell eggs that will not be held for service. Hot held, that means warmed up, right? So shell eggs that will be hot held. I'm sorry, not be hot held, but will be hot held for service. Want to make sure that we've got them to at least the minimum temperature for 17 seconds. Thoughts, questions, comments? Next level, 145 degrees for 15 seconds. This will include any seafood, including fish, shellfish, and crustaceans. Steaks, chops of pork, beef, veal, and lamb. Any commercially raised games and shell eggs that will be served immediately at 145 degrees for 15 seconds. Next level, 135 degrees Fahrenheit, no minimum time, and that would include food from plants, fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, such as beans and refried beans that will be hot held for service, right, to make sure that we get them to that minimum temperature. Questions, comments here? So walk right down, 165 all the way down to 135 as far as your temperatures. Know what those are for the exams. When cooling TCS foods, it's critical to ensure food handlers are using the correct method to cool food, cooling it quickly, getting it through the danger zone, regularly monitoring temperatures during cooling, and then food can be cooled by adding ice or cold water as an ingredient. And typically, we can use the water when cooling soups or stews. The recipe is made with less water than required, so that we can add the water and it's not going to upset the quality. And then cold water or ice is added after cooking to provide the remaining water and cool the food. Adam, anything else on the cooling part? Because I know you asked this last time that you wanted to mention here.
Is there a slide about the time that you have to get to 70 degrees and then to get to 41 degrees?
I don't think I have a slide on that. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, 2 hours. You have 2 hours to get from 135, we say 140, but 135 down to 70 degrees. And then once you get to that 70 degrees, I think it's 2 more hours. It's possibly 4 more hours, but again, we try to keep it more stringent, so you're still within the 4-hour window there. But you want to get it as cool as quick as possible. We in our kitchen use blast chillers, so it really chills things very, very quickly within an hour. But yeah, I'm going to look that up. I have a book right here. I'm just going to confirm, but I think it's 2 hours and 2 hours both sides.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
4 hours.
4? Okay.
Yes.
When we're reheating food, if you have commercially processed and packaged ready-to-eat food, we need to reheat that to an internal temperature of at least 135. This includes some examples like cheese sticks and deep fried vegetables, that type of thing. Any questions, thoughts, comments here? Okay. Getting in the flow of food as far as service. So when we're holding food or putting it out in a buffet type situation, that type of thing. So holding food without any temperature control. So any cold, ready to eat TCS food can be held without temperature control for up to 6 hours if it was held at 41 degrees. Remember, this is cold, ready to eat TCS food. So if it was already held at 41 degrees or lower before removing it from refrigeration, it does not exceed 70 degrees Fahrenheit during the service. If it has, throw out food that exceeds that temperature. Right? So, what comes to mind is potato salad at an open house, right? So just think about that. We want to make sure that we're not putting our customers anything that abuses this situation here. We want to make sure that it certainly has a label specifying the time that it was actually moved from refrigeration, not time that it was actually put out. But if it's been sitting on a counter, we want to make sure that the label has the time it was removed from the refrigeration and the time that it must be thrown out. That way there's no guessing game or oh, I think that I did that. Again, we want to make sure that we're documenting this stuff properly. We want to make sure that also that if it's sold, served, or thrown out within that 6 hours. So that 6 hours is key here. We want to make sure that we've done something with it going forward. Questions, comments, thoughts here? Okay. So some alternatives here for holding cold ready TCS food without temperature control, right? If it's discarded within 4 hours, the food can be allowed to reach any temperature. Okay, so if it's discarded, at least within that 4 hours. So if that's the case, the food must be refrigerated, right, or lower before removing it from that temperature control. So we want to make sure that we at least have it at that base temperature. The discard time must be 4 hours from the time it's actually moved from the refrigeration. It must be sold, served, or thrown out within that 4 hours. Take care of everything there. Produce that becomes TCS when cut, chopped, or sliced, and hermetically sealed containers of food that become TCS when opened can have an initial temperature of 70 degrees or lower. Must be discarded within that 4 hours. Cannot exceed the 70 degrees within the 4 hour period, and must be labeled with a discard time 4 hours from the time that the product became the TCS food. Questions here? Going to move to hot. Hot, ready to eat TCS food can be held without temperature control for up to 4 hours if, right, now we need to get the temperature up to certain levels. So if it was held at 135 degrees, ready to eat food or higher before removing it from temperature control, it has a label, a lot like the cold food. Again, when we removed it from the heat, and then it needs to be discarded, right? And it's sold, served, or thrown out within those 4 hours. So again, 4 hours is the main spot here. Want to make sure that we're labeling things appropriately. When we're reserving food, we never want to reserve food that's been returned by one customer to another customer. Pretty straightforward, but just a reminder. Any uncovered condiments that were served once, we want to make sure that we're not reserving those. Any uneaten bread, nothing as far as that goes. Any plate garnishes, can't reuse those. And then generally, only the unopened, prepackaged food in good condition can be reserved. But you guys might have different rules and regulations here, so make sure you're checking on those. So condiment packets, stuff like that, wrapped crackers or breadsticks, again, make sure you know what you guys are doing, what your organization and the demands are there. Questions, comments there? Moving over to the self-service areas. To prevent contamination, right? Place food in display cases, not up on the edge or anything like that. Package food to prevent contamination. Stock food using the correct utensils. Again, never use the ice as an ingredient if it was used to cool food or beverages. And then offering of raw meat, seafood, or poultry, unless it's these specific foods, which is sushi or raw shellfish. And then any portions that will be cooked immediately on the premises, like for many of you may not remember, but Mongolian barbecue, you're putting those on the grill and that kind of stuff yourself. So, and then last but not least, if it's raw, frozen shell on shrimp or lobster. Okay. Questions, comments here? May not pertain to you guys, but again, needs to be talked about, and that is bulk food, right? When labeling bulk food in service areas, make sure the label is in plain view so they know what they're getting that's in the food. The manufacturer processor label provided with the food. You might be able to put this stuff on a card or sign or other labeling method as opposed to putting it on a wrap or some type of thing like that, having the card or sign close by. Any other thoughts here? So if you have a label is really not needed for bulk unpackaged food, such as bakery products or unpackaged food portion, if the place has the product, makes no claim regarding health or nutrient content, no laws requiring labeling exist, which I don't know if, as far as the state of Michigan, that's part of that. The food is manufactured or prepared on the premises. The food is actually manufactured or prepared at another regulated food operation or processing plant owned by the same owner. Okay. Thoughts, questions here? When delivering food off-site, so a catering event or something like that, right? Label food with use by date and time and reheating and service instructions. That'll stop the guessing game and any mistakes that can be made. Want to clean the inside of the delivery vehicles regularly. Check internal food temperatures. Any questions or comments there? More delivering the food off-site, make sure the service site has the correct utilities for you to be able to heat food properly and that kind of thing. Safe water for cooking, the dishwashing, the hand washing, garbage containers certainly stored away from the food prep areas and storage and serving areas. The storing of raw meat, poultry, and seafood and ready-to-eat items separately. Don't want anything to cross-contaminate there. And then any vending machines. So vending machine safe. We want to check the product, daily life of product. Don't know if you guys have any of those types of things. Any of the refrigerated food prepped on site and not sold in 7 days must be thrown out. Keep the TCS food at the correct temperature. If you're refrigerating it or heating it, want to make sure that we're dispensing it in its original container. Wash and wrap fresh fruit with edible peels before putting it in the machine. Type of thing. Any other questions there? Okay, I have 1:48. Let's take a break till 2 o'clock. We'll come back and finish this part, and then we'll continue from there. Okay, so I'll see you right at 2 o'clock. Welcome back, everybody. So Adam had put in the chat if you had not seen it or you don't have access to it. So he said 2 hours to 70 degrees, then 4 hours to 41 degrees for a total of 6 hours. Just double check the book. So again, just a reminder that that's on there. So again, 2 hours to 70 degrees, then 4 hours to 41 degrees for a total of 6 hours. And then Adam said that he kind of does 2 and 2 just to be sure. So just want to share that with you. Thanks, Todd. Glad you're back, and let's keep going. That off there, I think, maybe. I guess I gotta totally take it off there. Okay, here we go. So some of the food management systems that you should probably have in place, and there's a number of different styles and types. You guys probably adhere to one yourself, but they give you the one that we'll talk about here is one that's taught by HTIM, or excuse me, ServSafe, not HTIM. So really, food management system is a group of practices and procedures intended to prevent foodborne illness. It actively controls the risks and the hazards throughout the flow of food. So one such thing could be, there are foundations of food safety management. One, make sure that you have a personal hygiene program that everybody adheres to, a food safety training program, which ServSafe would be one of those. Do you have a supplier selection and specification program, certain standards that suppliers need to meet? And then a quality control and insurance program. So those are certainly four different areas of a food safety management system. Others would include cleaning and your sanitation program. What are the protocols for that? Your standing operating procedures, having them written down in spots. Certainly about your facility, your design and equipment maintenance program, and then pest control program in your facility as well. Any questions, comments, thoughts here? So you have an active managerial control. We really focus on controlling the 5 most common risk factors for foodborne illness, right? Purchasing food from unsafe sources, failing to cook the food correctly, holding the food at incorrect temperatures, using contaminated equipment, and then, of course, practicing poor personal hygiene and how it can get into your food and food processes. To keep food safe, certainly practice your active managerial control throughout the flow of food. Anticipate any of that foodborne illness risk factors and control or eliminate those. And really, we're using what the processes that you use and making sure that you're following it diligently. And then training or retraining for anybody that doesn't remember or doesn't follow that process or procedure. Apply what you've learned here in the ServSafe program, but again, going back to understand what you have at your own local facilities. monitor your flow of food, provide the staff with that proper tools to make sure food is safe, with it, what it's called having your procedures down, and certainly training on those procedures and that type of thing. Implementing these plans, want to make sure that we're identifying any risks, that we're monitoring our staff and things that are involved, taking corrective action if something is amiss or somebody doesn't follow the protocol, or if there's been an outbreak of some type, again, taking corrective action there, having management oversight, training, and then reevaluation of your process if things are still not quite as tight as you would like. So first and foremost, identifying those risks, right? Find and document any potential foodborne illness risk in the operation to make sure that you're on top of that. Any hazards that can be controlled or eliminated. We're talking about monitoring things. Food will be safe if managers monitor those critical activities. Those should be in place and being monitored at all times. Kind of identify where the employees must monitor food safety requirements, such as when temperatures must be taken in the operation, how often sanitizer concentrations should be tested. Don't know if, again, use sanitizer on the back end of stuff. But again, if there's certain things that you use, making sure that you're using it at the right concentration so that they can do what they're intended to do. Taking the corrective action if something happens, so the appropriate steps to correct improper procedures or behaviors, such as if there's a sanitizer level too low, you need to increase the concentration to make sure that we're doing that. Any of the oversight will certainly include verifying that all policies, the procedures, and corrective actions are followed. And then any training that you're doing. So ensure the employees are trained to follow the procedures and retrained when necessary. And then at the very end, we talked about reevaluation. Want to periodically assess how good our system is working and how effective it is. And if it's not, then we need to make some changes. Questions, comments, thoughts here? When we talk about the FDA's public health interventions, okay, so they have some recommendations for controlling common risk factors. We want to make sure that you can demonstrate, they want to make sure that you can demonstrate your knowledge, that you staff health controls, controlling hands as a vehicle of contamination, your time and temperature parameters for controlling the pathogens, consumer advisories, and those types of things. There is many systems that you can implement, and to achieve the active managerial control, one of those could be the HACCP approach, which stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. The parts of that is really based upon identifying significant biological, chemical, or physical hazards at specific points within a product's flow of an operation. So once we've identified these hazards, the hazards can be prevented, eliminated, or reduced to safe levels. So to be effective, it must be based on a written plan. So even though these are certain points of our process, each process or each operation, it's going to be a little bit different because there's differences in each operation that you have. So what I'm saying that is your approach here where you work is going to be different than somebody's down the road, even though it's the acronym stands for the same thing. So it must be specific to each facility's menu, customers, equipment, processes, and operations. So everyone's can be a little bit different or quite different. So those systems will be, the documentation of the systems will be different. And that plan that works for one operation certainly may not work for another. So you can't cut and paste. Really, it needs to be written for your specific environment and facility. Any questions or comments here? Facilities and pest management. Going to get into some icky stuff here, but again, we want to make sure that we're operating our food operations in a very safe operation. So when we talk about floors, walls, and ceilings, they need to be maintained, right? So these are places that potential things can hide. So replace any missing or broken ceiling tiles, missing or broken flooring, repair holes in the wall. Again, just places for things to hide in that we don't want to have things hiding. Glue the coving tightly back to the walls if it need be. Remove any standing water immediately, right, after spraying or flushing floors, because again, standing water invites problems. So if you see the logo below on a piece of equipment, do we know what that means? Does the logo NSF, does it mean it's safe for use with food, or it is approved by the FDA? Who knows? You want to put it in the chat? You can put it in the chat. Anybody there? Anybody?
National Sanitation Foundation.
Yep. And then so what does it mean though? Does it mean that it's safe for use with food, or is it approved by the FDA?
Safe for use with food. It's approved by NSF, but it's safe for use with food because it's
Perfect. Yep. A is the answer. So thank you so much for that. So again, if it has that on there, NSF, it's safe for the use for food. So this could be one that's on the exam. So make sure you understand that. So it's safe for use with food. Food equipment must be smooth, easy to clean, and durable and resistant to damage, right? That just helps in most of the, and that's what NSF on there. So again, most of the food equipment comes with those types of things on it to be NSF approved. Switching gears to hand washing stations, right? Hand washing station must have running water at least 85 degrees, get it warm enough, right? Water must be potable, drinkable, right? Supplied through a mixing valve or combination faucet. Again, this is not something that you're going to be an expert on as we're going to get into some of this stuff, but you're going to know a plumber or somebody on site that can make sure that this is something that you have. You might have to have liquid bar or powdered soap to be able to wash your hands with there. Certainly a way to dry your hands, maybe a disposable towels or continuous towel system type of thing, or even a hand dryer with warm air or room temperature air delivered at high velocity. Certainly garbage containers, so you can throw any of the hand towels away, that type of thing, and any signage that tells you what the sink's used for, that type of thing. Questions or comments here? Sorry, I'm gonna get this off the screen here. So this next part, again, probably not gonna have to have huge knowledge of it, but it could be on the exam. And if you ever get in position to where you need some of this stuff to be looked at, you're probably going to hire somebody that's a plumber or somebody that's internal that knows what they're doing here. But when we talk about the backflow, so if you see that, you know, there's been this type of situation that's happening, you know, a reverse flow of contaminants through a cross connection into a potable water supply. I don't know when that can happen. Maybe it's never happened in your organization, but again, a backflow can result into pressure pushing contaminants back into your water supply, which in turn will contaminate everything else that comes through the spigot. So again, we want to make sure that our plumbing system is set up properly. We know a vacuum in the plumbing system created when high water use in one area of the operation sucks contaminants back into the water supply. So again, making sure that your systems, your physical systems are set up properly, that none of this kind of stuff can happen. And again, they go into greater depth here. Some mechanical devices for preventing backflow. You can have a vacuum breaker, double check valve, a reduced pressure zone backflow preventer or an RPZ, that kind of stuff. And then if you do have any of these things need to be checked periodically for proper function, right? By a trained or certified technician or plumber. The work must be documented so that if there's any issues that you have documentation to prove that the work has been done. And then according to local requirements and manufacturer's recommendations, of course.
Just so people are aware, all of our systems do have backflow prevention devices, but we also use an air gap as the main control. So just so you're aware.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you telling us that. Again, because again, it's not something that you're going to spend a lot of time on, but to know that you have it in place and it's checked regularly is great. Thank you. Emergencies that affect the facility. Again, hopefully you have never been part of that or have been exposed to that kind of stuff, but they can happen, right? So it could be any significant threat or danger to health, which could be a person or something. It certainly requires immediate correction or closure to prevent injury. Some of those health hazards can be maybe electric power outages and refrigeration breakdowns, and all of a sudden that's an emergency, right? We can't have food sitting in refrigerators that have no refrigerant being cycled through those. So we want to make sure that we're handling it. Any fire and floods that are happening, and of course any sewage backups, that's an emergency. Or any unauthorized people inside the facilities, especially in areas that they shouldn't be in, and then threats to the potable water supply, whether that includes broken mains and, God forbid, any terrorist contaminations or anything like that. Anybody been a part of an organization or have had emergencies where you've had to react pretty quickly? Any thoughts out there?
I don't think we've ever been in a flood anytime recently, right, guys?
Rainforest.
Say that again.
There was a flood last week.
Is that right? You had one as recently as last week.
Right after we got off the Zoom call with you.
Holy man, really? Okay, so it's certainly possible, right? So again, how do you handle that? What's your plan B if that type of things happen? So we want to make sure that we're handling that appropriately. Anybody else been on any electrical outage or anything like that? I've had some pretty good stories. Some of my up north students have talked about a car smashing into a transformer just outside the facility, and power was taken down for a couple of days at a place, at a hotel and restaurant facility. Created all kinds of stuff to where they had to send current people that were already checked into the hotel to their competitors, but there was nothing else they could be doing. So yeah, great stuff. Anybody else? Any other stories to share on that? Okay. If you have emergencies, some of the problems that you could use to correct these, right? So we need to understand where our food's at, right? And what temperature it's at. So again, making sure that we're taking quick inventory of what's going on with our time and temperature control of that TCS food that we have. Any cleaning and sanitizing surfaces in the operation, we want to make sure that we've done that if there's been an emergency. Reestablishing any physical security, especially if there's people that have been in areas that they shouldn't be, unauthorized people in areas they shouldn't be. If the water main is suspect, then we want to make sure that we're doing any type of verifying that the water supply is drinkable, that type of thing. And then, working with the local authorities to make sure that everything is safe going forward, and making sure that the communication's open. Questions, comments, thoughts here? The next area, again, this is ServSafe area. You guys may do it a little bit different at your facility, but the cleaning and sanitizing. Some of the stuff will be on the exam as it's stated here. So cleaners, we start talking about cleaners, right? Want stable cleaners, non-corrosive cleaners, safe to use. So it's for the environment, certainly available to use, that type of thing. So again, using cleaners that are for the most part safe and not going to cause any issues. If we're using sanitizers, making sure that they're regulated by state and federal EPAs, must be available to staff during all hours of the operation. Again, if sanitizers are part of your process. And then if we're using sanitizers, but what is the process to and when to clean and sanitize? So really, it's if we have to scrape or remove food from the surface, then we want to wash the surface, right? Get the big chunks out first, then wash the surface, then rinse. Then we're going to use the sanitizer, and then we're going to let it air dry. So 1 through 5, scrape the big chunks away first, wash the surface, rinse the surface, sanitize, then allow the surface to air dry from there. Some stationary equipment, right? So some of the equipment that you use, rinse the equipment surfaces with clean water, of course, sanitize the equipment surfaces, make sure the sanitizer comes in contact with each surface. So in some of the situation, You might have to disassemble a piece of equipment that you're using or a device. You want to allow all surfaces to air dry and then certainly put the unit back together if that's something that you've cleaned as far as that goes. This one I know will be at least one question or two will be on the exam, and that is setting up a 3-compartment sink. So we want to clean and sanitize each sink and drain board before we start this process, but we want to fill that first sink with detergent and water at least 110 degrees, fill the second sink with just clean water, and then fill the third sink with water and sanitizers to the correct concentration. And then provide a clock with a second hand to let food handlers know how long items have been in the sanitizer. Questions or comments here?
I'm just going to comment. I've seen on the last several ServSafe tests a question about 3-bay sink. And one of the things is, what is the first step? And that first step should be clean and sanitize the sink and the drain board. And that's kind of one of those tricky, fool you questions that I've seen just about every single time that I've proctored a test recently.
Yeah, so. You're exactly right. So that first one, make sure that you just understand the 3 steps. 3-compartment sink, and that first question out there is good point. Thank you. Cleaning people up after people who get sick, right? So, the diarrhea and vomit, if that happens, unfortunately, operation must be cleaned up correctly, right? The worst call is, hey, guess what? Somebody just had an accident in the bathroom or even in the dining room. So again, we want to make sure that we're doing things correctly. It certainly can carry contaminants such as norovirus, which is highly contagious. So again, we need to get on it relatively quickly. If we do it properly, right, we can prevent food from becoming contaminated and keep others from getting sick, which is what this is about, right? So, so we want to make sure that we have our processes in place. Chemicals that we use, right? Never keep the chemicals that are not required to operate or maintain the establishment, right? So there's no storage of unauthorized or contaminants that we're not normally using at the establishment. So again, pretty straightforward. Cover or remove items that could become contaminated before using the chemicals, right? We don't want to use a spray next to food that we just prepped or in the vicinity that a spray could get on top of that particular food. Certainly clean and sanitize equipment and utensils after using the chemicals around them. Always follow the law of manufacturer's direction for using those chemicals. When we're storing chemicals, right, we want to make sure we keep them separated from the food, the equipment, the utensils and linens, just so there's no issue. Just keep them as far away as we can, right? Spacing the chemicals apart from other items, partitioning off chemicals from other items stored in this particularly the same area. Must always be stored below food, equipment, utensils, and linens, and that's always a little bit too dangerous for me, even still. So storing those chemicals, if we do that, so chemicals stored in their original containers must have the manufacturer's label. So again, if it's paper and it gets scraped off somehow, we need to make sure that that's still labeled. So whatever we can do to make sure that's happening, and must include directions for use. Must be clear enough to read so we know what we're using. Working containers must be labeled with a common name of the chemical. So again, if there's any issue that we can get to that, sorry about that. So again, overall, making sure that we're using it safely and that type of thing. Anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments about what we went over today? We are not meeting next week. Next week is February 3rd. We are not scheduled to meet then. Our next time we will meet is on the 10th. We'll go over, that'll again be virtual. We'll go over financial management part 3, pretty in depth there. And then just to make sure everybody understands, February 17th, that's week 10 in our process. And that's when we will do these hospitality supervisor part 1, and then we'll do the ServSafe exam then as well. So that's a pretty loaded class when we come there. I'll also have your alcohol certificates then as well. Does anybody have any questions before we sign off today?
Is February 10th on Zoom or in person?
February 10th is virtual. It's Zoom.
So our next in person is on the 17th?
Correct. And that's week 10. Yep. So that'll be the exam. We'll take the exam that day. The Serve Safe Food Manager exam at the end of that class for those that need it. Other questions?
What temperature is it in Florida right now?
I'm not happy about it. It's today. It's about 47 degrees. So even though it's warmer than you guys, it's not like we're running around in our shorts and no shirt on.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. It was 85 2 days ago. I had a great time, but yeah, whatever. Okay, folks. Thanks for your attention today. Finish the week strong, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks. If there's anything that comes up, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you.
See you now.